can get started. Hello, everyone, council members and distinguished guests. Good to see you all. It is December 1st, believe it or not, 2021, and this is the Metropolitan Council Committee of the Whole. And just as a reminder, this is a virtual meeting, and we're doing that under the auspices of Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021. And if members of the public would like make any comments or questions, please feel free to email us at public.info@metc.state.mn.us. Good to see you all. It's a beautiful day in Minnesota. It's going to be dark in about 20 minutes, so settle in, and we'll start the meeting by taking a roll call. And Bridget, is that you?
It is me. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. Councilmember Barber.
Here.
Chambliss.
Here.
Cummings.
Here.
Ferguson.
Here.
Gonzalez.
Here.
Johnson. Johnson.
Here.
Lee. Oh, thank you.
Here.
Lilligren.
Here.
Lindstrom.
Here.
Muse.
Here.
Sterner.
Here.
Vento.
Here.
Wolf.
Here.
Zarin.
Present.
Chair Zelli.
I'm here, and we have a quorum. And now the next item is approval of the agenda. We don't need a vote unless somebody would like to make a correction or an addition. There's a couple of interesting and timely information items for tonight, and then some business that is timely that we need to pass. So if there's not any objection, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes from November 17th, 2021 that were sent out in advance. Is there a motion and a second to approve those minutes?
Council Member Chambliss moves approval of the minutes.
Thank you, council member. Is there a second?
Johnson seconds.
Thanks, Judy. Any discussion? If not, Bridget, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Muse.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf.
Aye.
Zarin.
Aye.
Chair Zelli.
Aye. The minutes are approved. Now on to a business item, which is a consent item, which is a series of tip amendments, which have been fully vetted. Unless anyone would like to take one out, we will consider them as a whole. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Moved by Barber.
Thank you, Deb.
Second by Wolf.
Thank you, Wendy. Any discussion? All right, Bridget, please call the roll.
Councilmember Barber.
Aye.
Chambliss.
Aye.
Cummings.
Aye.
Ferguson.
Aye.
Gonzalez.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Lee.
Aye.
Lilligren.
Aye.
Lindstrom.
Aye.
Muse.
Aye.
Sterner.
Aye.
Vento.
Aye.
Wolf,
Aye.
Zarin,
Aye.
Chair Zelli.
Aye. That motion is approved. Now on to the main course, which is a couple of updates. And first off, we have the Orange Line update, which is very timely because I'm planning on going to an opening on Saturday. So I hope it's going to be finished, and I suspect it is. But Charles Carlson, why don't you kick us off and introduce the team? And I think maybe this is one of your last actions as the head of the BRTs, and but appropriate that you should give us this report.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. Well, thank you, Mr. Chair and council members. It's my pleasure to introduce this item, and I'll hand it off to excellent professionals who are implementing this really exciting improvement. So we'll also bring up the presentation now, and we'll turn it over to them. But this is an exciting week for Metro Transit and for the region. It's not, I think, the circumstances that we expected to open the Orange Line in amidst a global pandemic, but that certainly does not diminish the work. In fact, quite the opposite, quite the extra effort to complete this project and be ready to implement it on time, under budget, and despite the pandemic circumstances. At the same time, we also don't want to diminish the significance of this project for the region over the long term. This project, while it's been in development in its current phase for around 9 years, actually is implementing a decades-long vision for how this area will be better served and how we can bring transit to new areas. We're also correcting some mistakes made in highway planning 50 plus years ago. So this restoration of access, this culmination of a vision, is coming together on Saturday with the launch of the Metro Orange Line. And so tonight we'll see a quick tour of the project that Derek Burby from Metro Transit Engineering and Facilities will give us to look at the infrastructure now in place to complete this. Dave Hansen from Bus Transportation will talk about the service and the operations readiness, the training that's gone into this. And then Kelsey Stones will talk about the celebration itself and some of our efforts to promote this around the community. So on the next slide, I'll just give a quick overview. I know the council is very familiar with this project, but just as a reminder, the Orange Line runs 17 miles from Burnsville to downtown Minneapolis. And as I mentioned, really is building on a new vision for this corridor as a all-day bi-directional service that you can get to station efficiently, effectively, quickly, and comfortably across the day. So this is what's new to this corridor, building on what we've done very well for decades of bringing people into downtown in the morning and out of downtown in the afternoon. Opening for service on Saturday, and we'll talk about that. And then the project completing here with about 60% federal funding, and that's actually up from the first plan. We received this summer an additional $11 million appropriation from the federal government under the American Rescue Plan Act. There were funds appropriated by Congress to small starts projects like the Orange Line, and then FTA allocated a portion of those funds to the Orange Line itself. So the effect of this is that it will reduce the local shares of the project by that additional fund. We're also going to complete the project. We project right now at least $6 million under budget. So we'll see some savings there. So a good story for us, and right on time in terms of our commitment to the FTA around a revenue service state. In the grant that we signed back in 2018, we said we'd be open before December 11th of 2021, and here we are on December 4th. So holding through that start date all along. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'll actually turn it over to Derek to actually walk the council through the corridor. We'd love to do this on a bus all together, but I think the circumstances as well as scheduling didn't allow that. So we'll do the next best thing. I'll hand it over to Derek. Thank you. And we'll all come back together to answer any questions the council has.
Thank you, Charles. Again, as you said, it's a great day today. We're getting closer to even a more fun day on Saturday to start service on Orange Line. And while we as a team wish we could have given you this tour in person, we continue to be agile during these trying times. For today's presentation, I plan to walk everyone through the Orange Line alignment from downtown Minneapolis to Burnsville, showing you the facilities that our passengers will enjoy using on Metro Transit's newest Metro line, the Metro Orange Line. We can hop to the next slide, please. So we'll start in downtown Minneapolis, where the Metro Orange Line buses will utilize the Mark II corridor to both load and unload passengers. While the touch in this area is small in the grand scheme of the Orange Line, riders will notice a lot of familiar BRT items such as pylons, improved real-time signing, and Metro branding. Next slide. Continuing south on our way down Marquette, there will be one final stop at 11th Street, which will, or 11th Avenue, sorry, as we enter the 35W via a bus-only bridge on 12th Street, shown in the right image. While we're continuing to work south on this tour, this piece on the right side here is extremely important for northbound riders and southbound riders to get into and out of downtown Minneapolis. The bridge on 12th Street will provide access to a bus-only contraflow lane on 12th, which leads downtown inbound riders over to 2nd Avenue. Next slide, please. Continuing south out of downtown, this is one image that I know many of you have seen either on paper or in person before, but it's helping everybody remember what this old area used to look like. There are obviously images that show needs for repair. This old and we call it quote unquote a station at 35W and Lake was not ADA compliant, was hard for even our able-bodied riders to access, and wasn't a safe space for our riders. So we're proud to show the improvements that many of you have already seen on the next slide. So the improvements at 35W and Lake Street are incredible, and they're, as you can see, quite substantial. Our riders are now greeted with a fully accessible facility, modern amenities, improved lighting, and a place for community to gather and connect through transit. A transit-only bridge was built here to house this new facility, while vehicular traffic travels on their own bridges to each side. The red concrete, which has become commonplace in transit, helps delineate transit areas from those of general purpose traffic. Next slide. Down below the 35W level, riders are invited to a transit station in a plaza that will help connect our local routes with those express routes above. Riders will find elevators, as well as you can see on the left side, a grand staircase to bring themselves up to our upper level. The fully accessible facility has exterior pedestrian ramps, as shown on the right image, as well as stairs to get people into the building. When connecting to local routes on Lake Street, riders will be able to use the plaza space to gather and relax prior to hopping aboard a bus. This plaza is over an acre in size and boasts a connection in its northwest quadrant to the heavily utilized Greenway. Next slide, please. After we leave Lake Street and continue south, the next stop we'll make will be at I-35W and 46th Street station. This station has been there for years, but we had minor touches to this station, including new real-time signs, ticket vending machines, and other minor items that help bring this facility to Metro BRT levels. Next slide. Now, as we leave 46th Street station and the city of Minneapolis, we head south into Richfield. The first stop in Richfield is on the ramp at 66th Street. Richfield recently rebuilt 66th Street with many different improvements for movement of people both in vehicles and those on bikes and pedestrian. So we use that vision to help place these stations. The images of these stations on this slide show both the northbound and southbound station and the Metro Orange Line. You can see real-time signs, ticket vending machines, enhanced shelters, and pylons that our riders experience while they use this new Metro line. Next slide. After we leave the first stop in in Richfield, we stop at the next final stop in Richfield, which is positioned in a location to promote transportation to businesses with Best Buy Corporate as well as Dick's Sporting Goods. in this area, as well as many apartments for riders that come into and out of downtown Minneapolis. Riders will also be able to park at the Knox Avenue Park and Ride and board Metro Orange Line buses into downtown at this location. Next slide. So this slide is the first of 3 slides that are related to the Knox Avenue tunnel underneath 494. Many have seen slides and images like this, but this area is well known for traffic congestion and has been labeled as the worst interchange in our region for vehicular traffic. The best way for Metro Transit to avoid this congestion was to avoid it altogether with a transit-only tunnel underneath 494. This tunnel will be signed for buses only, but will also allow pedestrians and cyclists a connection between the city of Richfield and Bloomington. The image on the left is a picture taken early in construction, while the drone image on the right is one that was taken in July of this year when the tunnel was near completion. Next slide. This slide shows some of the neat construction progress throughout the project. The left image shows crews pouring one of the final lids on the tunnel's south end, while the other one shows crews prepping sidewalk and the guideway on the left side of the right image. If you also look in the back left of that image, you can see a large crane that's been placed to set a lift station pumps to help keep the tunnel dry while we have wet times in Minnesota. Next slide. This is a more recent image taken moving south through the tunnel, and you can kind of see what the finished product of the tunnel will look like. The image on the left shows the trail that is on the tunnel's east side, the red concrete pavement that we talked about at Lake Street. And the one image on the right would show the look that you would see on a northbound Metro Orange Line bus as you enter the tunnel. And that shows the pedestrian walkway on the right side of the image. Next slide. Now that we've made it through the worst interchange in our region, we head south to the first stop in the city of Bloomington. This station is located at Knox and American Boulevard. And as shown in the previous slides of stations, you can see many of the items that our riders have been accustomed on Metro Orange Line, our Metro lines. Large improved shelters along with amenities make this a first-class ride. Next slide. Continuing south, we stop at the second stop in Bloomington at I-35W and 98th Street. The station utilizes the existing South Bloomington Transit Center and connects riders from many local routes to the Metro Orange Line. The stop boasts both north and southbound stations and additionally a large plaza that connects the two with the local routes that drop passengers off to the right of it. Quick and easy access back onto I-35W will help operations maintain schedule. Next slide. After leaving 98th Street, we continue south, crossing the Minnesota River and enter the city of Burnsville. Our buses continue down 35W and exit to Highway 13 east before turning onto Nicollet Avenue. Right off Nicollet Avenue, our drivers are greeted at the Burnsville Heart of the City stations. As its name suggests, the station is right in the middle of a growing area in the city of Burnsville with ample public parking, the Ames Center, and many other local attractions nearby. The station provides riders an opportunity to board the Metro line right from Burnsville. You can see on the bottom right image there is a rain garden is one way that we help treat water also in that area. So, next slide. So the last stop on the Metro Orange Line as we head southbound is at Burnsville Parkway. The station is a single platform that's located near multiple employers and surrounded by walkways and trails that allow pedestrians to make it to the Metro Orange Line. As the virtual tour concludes now, the Metro Orange Line bus simply crosses Burnsville Parkway and heads north on I-35W back towards downtown, stopping at all the stations we just passed along the way as it works its way. While this tour wasn't exactly what we wanted it to be, I hope someday we can see everybody along the alignment enjoying the new service. I want to give credit to members of the design and construction team that helped make this project a reality. The Lake Street Station construction was led by Christina Morrison and Jesse Hailstone. The stations package was led by a team of Alicia Vapp, Paul Lamb, Kendra Yeager, and Michael Enyai. Myself and Ryan Fry worked together to deliver the Knox Tunnel, and Joe Jansen helped oversee all the construction of the entire project. Kudos to everyone for their efforts. And with that, I'll turn it over to Assistant Director of Street Operations, Dave Hansen, to discuss operations.
Good afternoon, Chair Deli and council members. Can you hear me okay?
Definitely. Thanks.
Great. So the Orange Line Bus Rapid Transit Service will provide frequent bi-directional daily service from downtown Minneapolis to the Burnsville Transit Station via the Marquette and 2nd Avenue corridors, the 12th Street contraflow lane, and a bus-only transit advantage, both on and off of 35W in and out of downtown Minneapolis. The weekday frequency is 15 minutes, is every 15 minutes between 5 a.m. and midnight, with weekend frequency every 30 minutes on Saturday between 6 a.m. and 11 p.m. and on Sunday at 7 a.m. till 11 p.m. As our operator availability increases, it will allow for Orange Line and connecting route frequency as planned, including new routes intersecting stations at Lake Street, 46th Street, 66th Street, both at Knox Avenue, both at 76th Street and American Boulevard, the Burnsville heart of the city, and the Burnsville Parkway station. Next slide, please. All 14 buses have been accepted and have successfully completed, tested, and are ready to for Saturday's grand opening. These are new Flyer articulated 60-foot low floor 52-passenger buses equipped with 3 doors to expedite boarding and alighting to support the efficiency of the Orange Line operations. All the buses are.
May I offer some assistance here? We're one slide off right now.
I'm sorry, who is, there you go. Thank you very much, council member. Very much, thank you, appreciate that. These are, all the buses are equipped with the Bentech security barrier and Apollo camera systems to provide and assist with operator security. The buses are equipped with the quantum mobility securement system, which can be self-initiated by the user. And these buses do not have fare boxes on board due to the nature of the BRT service being an off-board payment process via ticket vending machines and station validators. Next slide, please. The I-35W Lake Street Station had a soft opening on October 21st of this year, which allowed for operations of 7 MBTA routes and Metro Transit's Route 535 at the freeway station level and the Route 21, future B-line, on the Lake Street level, which provided additional confirmation of the station's functionality without any report of issues. Next slide. Bus operational testing consisted of 16 tests ranging from service simulation, Knox tunnel testing, and platform clearance, which were completed successfully without failures noted or modifications being required. 139 Metro Transit operational staff, including operators, supervisors, and managers, have completed Orange Line training, with only 8 exceptions due to being sick, on vacation, or out of office. And these, of course, will be scheduled to receive their training once they return. That is our operational and training update. And with that, I can pass that on to Kelsey Stones for the grand opening update. And thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dave, and good afternoon, everyone. As we've heard many times, Orange Line begins service operations this Saturday on December 4th at approximately 6 a.m. And to commemorate the start of service, Metro Transit will host a grand opening event on the South Plaza of the I-35W and Lake Street Station, which is going to include remarks from project leaders and partner agencies and a ribbon cutting on the freeway level of I-35W. For dignitaries and guests, Metro Transit is going to host a ride on the Metro Orange Line, and it's going to travel to the south and stop at the Burnsville heart of the city station, where they will be invited to walk 2 short blocks to the Nicollet Commons Park for welcome remarks from the mayor of Burnsville, as well as have an opportunity to enjoy the pop-up event that will include info booths, entertainment, and concessions from local community businesses. This event and a similar pop-up event taking place on the North Plaza of the I-35W and Lake Street Station will run from 2 to 4 p.m. that afternoon. Rides on the Metro Orange Line will be free Saturday, December 4th through Monday, December 6th. Staff ambassadors will ride Orange Line buses and staff key bus boarding locations to assist customers with any questions they may have about the service and or connecting routes. Revenue service is going to begin on Tuesday, December 7th, and staff will once again ride buses as well as be placed at key stations to assist and answer customer questions regarding the first day fare collections for the Orange Line. Next slide, please. In an effort to promote the Metro Orange Line opening, we'll be using transit fleet advertising assets that include interior cards in our buses and trains, bus shelter advertising panels on Marquette and 2nd Avenue, and throughout the corridor where space is available, and bus side ad panels. We also have digital billboards placed within the 35W corridor. This is a unique opportunity that we have a captive audience, so we're able to get our message out to our customers along the entire corridor of 35W. It is right now currently posting a pre-opening message, and then we'll switch to a post-opening message for 2 weeks after December 4th. We have print and digital ads placed in the corridor, focused in BIPOC and community newspapers that we've been working with throughout this long journey of the project. And then we'll also utilize our social media channels and the project webpage to further enhance the promotional awareness of the Metro Orange Line opening. Next slide. I think that's where we'll take any questions that anyone might have.
Great. Well, congratulations, team. This is really exciting. Any questions and comments from council members? Councilmember Barber.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. No questions, just a comment and a huge shout out to this team. I'm really excited about this and the work that you guys have all done. It's for me, coming out of the South Metro, number one, having this great connection from the South Metro up to Minneapolis is really critical. I think that watching this evolve over the years and seeing it actually come to fruition is really exciting. And I really want to thank all of you for your really, really hard work. It's quite impressive. So thank you all.
Great. Councilmember Cummings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Kudos also, and reiterating what Deb said, and then I appreciate that the team also did so much conversation with the communities through which this will pass to get their input and their thoughts on the development process to make this truly a partnership and the most effective way to reach so many people. So it's much appreciated, and thank you for that. And thank you for this presentation. I'm excited for Saturday.
Any other thoughts, questions?
Mr. Chair?
Go ahead, Judy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to echo what's already been said. This has just been such a huge undertaking, and it is just very rewarding. And I know, especially for Councilmember Lilligren, I've seen his comments on this and the amount of time that he's spent around and in this project before this project, and how rewarding it must be for people who live near this line, but also people who travel and will benefit from this line who live further away, because it's a huge regional asset. So thank you for everybody's hard work. I wish I could join you all in the celebration on Saturday, but I have to work myself that day. So just know that I'm with you in spirit, and I'm just so proud of the team, all of your hard work, your outreach. And it's just days like this that I love being in local government, because you can see the fruition of the hard work. So congrats to everybody.
Councilmember Wolf.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just had a question on whether we need to RSVP for the bus down to Burnsville. It works great for me, because I was going to park in Burnsville and take the line up to Lake Street for the 1 o'clock deal. And so coming back to Burnsville works out perfect for me, but I didn't know if there's capacity issues of how many people will be on that particular bus.
I can address that, Mr. Chair. Councilmember Wolf, it's always helpful if we know to expect you, so you can shoot any of us an email, but no RSVP required, and we'd have a spot for you. We actually have 2 buses available in case they're both to have enough space to spread out a little bit, but also just to make sure we don't need to turn folks away.
Great, Wendy.
Thanks.
We'll save you a spot. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Oh, go ahead, Robert. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it. And I just want to thank this team. It's an incredible accomplishment. Congratulations. Looking forward to the event on Saturday. Thank you all, and those of our staff that worked on this beforehand. And I don't need to retread. I used to live very, very, very close to the Lake Street station and was on city council when a lot of the layout issues were resolved. And I just think a huge lesson learned, and I do want to lift this up, was the interjurisdictional cooperation here. It was unprecedented, really, to have MnDOT, Transit Metro Council, Hennepin County, the city of Minneapolis, all working together. It was a little bit of an exercise in building trust. It's great to hear from you, Derek, that the amount of federal funding that went into this, but because of the integration of the modes and the projects, it was really unclear at the beginning of this sort of where these funds were going to come from. But all jurisdictions committed to creating an integrated design that helped build place connected to the Midtown Greenway. You know, we had the very nearby Lake in Hiawatha station for the blue line, and the same jurisdictions, very similar issues. There was light rail transit, there was a state highway, there was a county road, there was a city greenway project, all going on at the same time that were not integrated at all and really caused damage to sort of the placemaking in the local community. And here I think this is something that we can be proud of and something that we can model going forward in the future. So again, thanks to the staff for their excellent work on this.
Thanks for those words. I will just reflect, as one of the first meetings I went to as the new Commissioner of Transportation, I think it was 2012, was a meeting in City Hall with the city, the county, Metro Council, Transit, and I was always shocked at this project isn't easy. And you know, great projects. I think this was as much of a connector as it is just the actual transit line itself. And I'm certainly very familiar with that station at Lake Street. I also reflect on the neighborhood that was very upset. We were widening the interstate of 35 so I met with neighbors and they really gave me an earful because I said, well, we're not actually widening the interstate, we're actually accommodating a transit center. And are you against the transit station? And the neighborhood was like, no, oh my God, that's the best thing of this whole project is this wonderful transit station. We just want you to make the interstate smaller. And I was like, well, it's not actually, we're actually making the lane smaller. It's just for this transit station. And they said, Commissioner, you don't understand what you're talking about. We want a smaller highway and we want that beautiful station. So my heart goes out for the neighborhood who recognizes, hey, transit matters, and now we've got it. So I'm thrilled in all respects. And I know, having been really close to this project, it didn't just happen. It was, you know, on time and on budget. You know that there was a lot of pain and thoughtful planning. And so hats off to everybody. Make it happen. All right, with that, I think stay tuned for Saturday and hope everybody, even those that can't make it, will take a ride on the Orange Line and see how it feels. Now we have another really important item, and I really appreciate our guests who have kind of sat through an Orange Line discussion to talk about our regional economic initiatives. We've kind of take you back to, it's almost 2 years when this council became the government entity to approve a regional economic framework. And we did that with close collaboration with Greater MSP and the Center for Economic Inclusion. And I'm really thrilled that we have a number of guests, including Tawana Black and Peter Frosch, along with Amanda Taylor, you know, who have really been helping develop that framework. But what's more important, had we even an inkling to know that we would have this pandemic, would have this total need for economic recovery funds, and here we are as a metro area, well positioned and to actually take advantage of some of the deep planning for an inclusive growth that we did. So. This is a great opportunity for an update and actually maybe even more importantly, a call to action of what we can be doing collectively again together to help take the next steps. So maybe we'll call on Michael Larson from our staff to kind of kick it off, and we'll hope to have a robust conversation. So Michael.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon, Mr. Chair and council members. It's great to see you again. I'm very pleased to help support a dialogue about recent regional economic initiatives in the region that our partners are supporting. Next slide, please. So I'd like to offer a warm welcome to our guests who many of you seen recently, Tawana Black and Andrea Furston from the Center for Economic Inclusion, and Peter Frosch and Amanda Taylor from Greater MSP. So I look forward to hearing their thoughts later this afternoon. Next slide, please. So before we dive into specifics and invite our guests to participate and join the conversation, I do want to remind you about the 9 strategic priorities that were adopted in the Regional Economic Framework. And actually, I think the adoption was in August of last year. So not quite 2 years, but certainly some time has passed. The initiative that we'll discuss in more detail shortly touches upon I think most of these, but in particular, those related to job growth, workforce and skills, racial inclusion, and startups and innovation. Next slide, please. So I wanted to show you this slide, which we've used in the past in presentations on the Regional Economic Framework. It articulates some of the key roles that each of our 3 organizations play in relation to each other and in terms of the economic well-being of the region and its residents. It goes without saying that there are many other entities and partnerships that each of our organizations have, including the dozens of frontline organizations, community organizations, local governmental units, and other government agencies. And I think the Regional Economic Framework certainly doesn't list them all, but I think at last count it was 70 or 80 that we have listed under each of the strategic priorities in terms of who's really key in working on these regional issues together. So since the Regional Economic Framework was adopted, I really see each of our organizations playing these roles in ongoing and in new ways. Most recently at the Committee of the Whole, you heard an overview of project plans for the 2050 Metropolitan Development Guide, and also last month at the BIPOC work group, you discussed how equity can be more reflected in the regional planning cycle. Although it's early, I fully expect that our next Metropolitan Development Guide, will be more strongly rooted in our place-based economic competitiveness and equity research, as well as strategies and accountability around racial income and wealth gaps. So while I'm focused on one current initiative that's in play right now, I do want to offer to our guests the opportunities to share specific other work that they think is important to the region that they're involved in as time allows and there's interest. Next slide, please. So as I discussed in the memo, Greater MSP is taking the lead for a regional application to the U.S. Economic Development Administration's Build Back Regional Challenge. And in our case, it's referred to as the Bold North Bioinnovation Challenge. The Bold North Bioinnovation Cluster. Another near-term opportunity for the region is the Good Jobs Challenge, and perhaps our partners can weigh in on that program as there's time and interest. And although there's considerable amount of formula-related dollars from the federal government to meet various emergency needs related to the pandemic, to stimulate the economy and to build infrastructure, these federal dollars from the EDA are nevertheless competitive. And I believe we have, our partners believe we have a strong proposal. Next slide, please. So just briefly, and as I summarized in the memo, the Bold North Bioinnovation Cluster is rooted in our region's economic competitive advantages, as well as growth potential. And those include things like health and dominance in health and agricultural field, advanced cell and gene therapy, biomanufacturing technologies, and the existence and presence of both large existing and emerging small firms. Next slide, please. So to just offer a little grist for the mill in terms of racial equity and economic discussion, I offer the vision that was included in the project narrative, which was we will create an economic ecosystem where knowledge access, opportunities, and outcomes overcome I think I may have a typo there, historic disparities and uneven COVID recovery to holistically develop talent, new ventures in our economy to build wealth and job creation for our underrepresented populations. Next slide, please. So briefly, some of the strengths that our proposal relates, that it will focus on is a place-based and regionally accessible approach. education and training, and capacity for supporting the development of new firms. The Central Corridor is a major focus of the partnership implementation projects, and I think it may be interesting to you to learn more about the thinking of that from our partners and the conversations they've had. Next slide, please. The Center for Economic Inclusion will play a key role in terms of the program's design and accountability for outcomes that relate to racial income and wealth gaps. Broadly, this will happen through access to spaces and programs as part of the initiative, recruitment and support for hiring outcomes, and developing mechanisms to ensure these outcomes. So when I'm finished, I hope Tawana and or Andrea will provide additional details about how they think this will occur and their thoughts about their participation and partnership in this. So next slide, please. So I want to give you some overview of the significant partnerships that this project would represent. Some of you may be unfamiliar with MBOLD, which is an existing greater MSP coalition of food and agricultural businesses, research and producers. In terms of what it's often referred to as, quote, talent pipeline development, some of the names that you may be familiar with are an organization called Genesis Works, whose mission is to provide pathways to career success for high school students in underserved communities, as well as Summit Academy OIC, whose vision is to be recognized as a regional leader in the development of workforce and educational services. The partners also include the University of Minnesota, Fairview, local government, and many others. And I'm less familiar with this group of people, and I'll leave it to our guests to identify maybe some of those that may be key and that I've missed for this effort. Next slide, please. So this slide identifies the projects that would be associated with the effort, including both construction-related projects to support the initiative, shown on the left, and partnership, strategy development, and programming on the right. While there's a little bit on this, I can come back to this slide later for reference in the discussion. So we can refer to each of these particular programmatic initiatives. So next slide, please. So, Mr. Chair, I'd like to suggest that we, in addition to any remarks that you might have, that we hear next from our partners to add to and embellish what I've had to say, as well as share their particular perspectives, as well as to provide the opportunity for our council to ask questions and provide feedback to our partners. I think one area that I think might be useful is to hear about next steps. If we're selected, which I believe we will be hearing yet this month about whether or not we're expected to advance to the next stage, and what happens if we're not. I think I've been pretty impressed about the partnerships that have been built from this. And if we're not selected to participate, how we might utilize that work and effort nevertheless. And finally, you may recall that the Regional Economic Framework serves as an alternative comprehensive economic development strategy, or CEDS, which makes us eligible for these competitive EDA funds. And I believe that it has elevated discussion of our pressing issues related to racial economic equity and opportunity. And since the CEDS is required to be updated every 5 years, our thoughts that have been, and I think we've discussed this previously, and we intend to incorporate this body of work into the next Metropolitan Development Guide so that we could continue to meet that 5-year requirement and play that role in the region for this particular requirement. So I believe that incorporating this work and this approach will eventually strengthen that regional document, regardless of what our specific role might happen to be as the Metropolitan Council. And should we be selected as a participant in the Build Back Better Regional Challenge, it might be great on-the-job experience for us that could help inform future policy for all of our organizations. Mr. Chair, with that concludes my presentation, and I leave it to you as to engage our guests. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. That's a great PowerPoint, and I'm really looking forward to the conversation. I think I'll just underscore that this is a really, excuse the pun, bold application, but it isn't by no means does it mean it's the only one. And I think this is kind of an opportunity for us to think more carefully about how else and what other initiatives we might be able to support, both as a conduit, maybe even with our own technical assistance at that council. So, and it's great to have Tawana, and I missed Andrea first, and you're also here, Peter, and Ms. Taylor. So Amanda, so who would like to go first? Maybe it would be great to have kind of a perspective from both CEI and Greater MSP as to this process.
Yeah, well, maybe
Jump
I'll
in, Peter.
jump in. Thanks, Michael. And hello, everybody. Good evening. Congratulations on the Orange Line. It's amazing. And it was really exciting and fun to be able to see that. So maybe we'll start specific and then we can pull back. So if we've jumped into Build Back Better, frankly, I'll probably just turn over to Amanda and Andrea to talk a little bit more about that because they have the details. A lot has to do with whether or not we're selected this month for phase 2. But Amanda?
Yeah. Thanks, Peter. I'll provide a little bit more on Build Back Better, and thank you, Michael, for that overview. It's a big opportunity. There's a lot of elements to it, and being able to talk through it concisely and really like cover all the areas is no small feat. So thank you for that. And I'm happy to, as well as the rest of the team that's here with Greater MSP and CEI, provide more answers to questions that you have. But I would just, share that this is one of 6 programs that US EDA has created to award what was their American Rescue Plan appropriation. So $3 billion appropriated to US EDA through the American Rescue Plan. Most of that is in competitive grants. And so you may remember last year when we were working together to build the regional economic framework, that was to qualify our region for grants like this. So the reason we are able to do this is because Met Council, took the step of adopting the regional economic framework. And so we thank you for that. This was the phase 1 application that was submitted that Michael just walked you through. It proposes 8 really exciting projects that, when implemented simultaneously, will really accelerate development of an exciting, innovative cluster for our region, an industry cluster, building on these existing assets that we have in health and medical and food and agriculture sectors. And so, we're really excited to see how these came about and to see how they complement each other. We have 4 construction projects, so new builds or renovations of buildings that are going to be spaces for innovation, and they're going to house education and training and new business creation and idea generation, and they are all located along the Green Line. These are all very purposefully transit-connected spaces, and we've been referring to this development as an innovation corridor, and truly the Green Line as an innovation corridor. And so the investment in transit and transit as an asset is what I believe is a true differentiator of our proposal to the 528 other proposals that were submitted to US EDA for this opportunity. So I'm happy to get into more details. I know Andrea can provide some more information about how we've build equity into this proposal and how that's going to be realized if we are invited to proceed to phase 2. So a couple of notes on these next steps. We're right now waiting to hear if we are to be invited to phase 2 to complete a more comprehensive application. We'll find out anytime, any day. The month of December is the time frame that we were provided from EDA. We'll then have until March 15th to complete a phase 2 application. And that means each of those component projects that you saw on one of those last slides from Michael has to complete a full application to EDA. This is no small project for each of those individual project teams. And so we'll be doing providing a lot of support to them as they work on their applications. Greater MSP will remain in a lead institution role, which means we'll be kind of crafting an overarching narrative to keep all these projects, packaged together and to hold true to that vision that was presented in the concept narrative. So a lot of collaboration still underway and will remain through as we hope to be invited to phase 2 and get to complete this opportunity. This could mean up to $100 million coming to our region to invest in these projects, to accelerate this really exciting vision of building America's most inclusive bioinnovation cluster. And so I think there'll be opportunities for Met Council to participate, certainly in phase 2 and well beyond, as we sustain this cluster over the long term. So I'll open it back up to my team members and certainly to CEI to add some more here, and we can get, respond to any more specific questions you may have about the process. So thank you.
Thank you, Amanda, and thank you, Chair Zelle. If I can just step in here for a moment.
Please, I was just going to suggest you give us this little kind of an equity understanding, because my understanding is, even though we're waiting to hear in December, we're as competitive as any application, in part because of the equity and social justice components that are in this program.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, we appreciate this partnership, and we believe it brings our strengths together in ways that are really critical for our region. And so as the centers really come to the table with greater MSP in this work, it's really about centering racial equity, and doing that by really looking at what are those key metrics that we are driving towards, and how do we ensure that we're being intentional about who we need to see these results for on behalf of the larger community. And so it's only when we begin to have that level of focus that we begin to see that priority in resources and strategy development around those key challenges that we have been dealing with in our region. And so really that's a piece of the role that we have played. The other piece that we're really excited to engage in is, assuming that this moves forward, is really centering racial equity in the planning efforts with each of the project teams. And so really coming in and saying, let's begin with the data, let's understand where we are at, let's look at those key metrics that we are driving towards, those results. And then from there, how do we understand what the threats and barriers, what the root causes have been that have kept us from achieving those results, so that we're able to target then our strategy development moving forward on those really change agents that are going to get us the results that we need in the region. And so this is where we can bring our anti-racist results-based facilitation to bear in these planning efforts, to ensure that we have that level of focus that we need within each of those project plans and proposals that move forward. And then that we're using data in a continuous improvement manner, both within each of the projects, but across those projects as well, to ensure that we are driving for the shared results for our region. And I will turn it I'll turn it back to you, Chair Zelle, and I don't know if Tawana wants to jump in with that.
I don't know, Tawana or Peter, do you want to kind of get back at a higher level? This is a great setup, Amanda and Andrew.
One thing I'd say, Chair Zelle and council members, is two things I would stress, and that is one, that this really offers us an opportunity to double down on the partnership, as I think both Michael and Amanda and Peter noted before, as this is a partnership that has been going on for a few years, but that certainly we elevated last year as we created the regional economic framework and really articulated not only goals, but really drove deeper into that spirit of partnership and what it takes to take that spirit and really articulate investment and actions behind it. And we've been able to demonstrate that from a racial equity perspective through the Anti-Racism and Economic Justice Trust that the Met Council has been a member of, and really using that framework Andrea just articulated around applying anti-racist results-based accountability, using the conditions of systems change from FSG, with over 55 employers across the region over the last year who've worked with the center, both at the trust and in our place-based employer cohorts, to really do that root cause analysis, to understand what are those things inside both our organizations, inside our businesses, inside the ways that we have been taught to think and operate that get in the way of good intentions, and get in the way of our partnerships and our initiatives and keep us from actually getting to that economy that is both growing and prospering and is racially inclusive and equitable. And so we know that through the work that those employers have been doing, those government agencies have been doing, that hard wrestling with not only their data, but those internal cultures. We know from what we're seeing and how different it is from the traditional kind of D&I approaches, if you will, that we're on the right path. We know from the internal hard wrestling that we're seeing at the council through that work that we're going to see even greater results as we move into this partnership. And we feel really confident, to your point about this application. And I appreciated the question that was on one of the early slides about, okay, what if by some crazy chance the feds don't see the warrant in this investment? I think the good thing is that you have partners that have come around Greater MSP in this partnership who are committed to doing the hard work together and continuing to propel this region forward.
Yeah, absolutely. We're on fire. And I want to thank you and Andrea and remind council members that we as Met Council have been fully engaged in the Anti-Racism Justice Trust, and not just setting goals, but actually kind of now working at identifying those root causes, which is not easy, but it's just really important that we, and we'll all be hearing more about that as we march ahead. Anyway, you're going to say something.
Yeah, maybe just 2 points to build on this. One, really excited for the partnership with CEI and timely opportunity to talk about the connectivity with Met Council. I think there are two keys here. One is to recognize that the federal government is trying to do something new and they're challenging regions to do something new. So racial equity in community development is something that has been discussed for many, many years. Racial equity in economic development is frontier work. So this is the U.S. Economic Development Administration. This is a cluster building challenge. This is like core economic development stuff. And racial equity is a top priority from this administration, which is different from the CARES Act, where that was officially not a priority. We work to make it a priority together. But this is frontier work. Like, this is innovative, and it's a great opportunity and a challenge to all of us to, in a short time frame, try to consolidate a lot of the ideas and practices that we've been at for several years, into a very concise, tangible application. So there's probably a lot of grace, right, that needs to be extended all around, because we're all doing a lot of new things, and the federal government's doing something new. The other thing is, as you heard, we're trying to do it right, we're trying to do it well, we have to do it fast. So, and the time frame is just something to acknowledge, and I know the Met Council appreciates a good time frame. This wasn't announced to the country until like July 27th or 28th, and then people are reading it, in early August, and the rules at that point weren't even clear. So basically, all this work was done in something like 8 weeks. We tallied the hours. There's something like a couple thousand hours in 8 weeks, and then there's this pause, and then if we find out that we're advanced, it's 3 months. It's another super intense, roughly 90-day spread. And so, that's why we learned a lot in that first phase. But a lot of communication, a lot of transparency, a lot of dialogue, and a lot of focus on trust and relationships is critical, because everything has to move really fast. And we know we don't have the time we want to do it the way we'd like to do it. It's like, this is the time we're given, and so we're going to do it as well as we can in that space. So we're writing the list down of what would happen if we find out, so we can get rolling right away. But we know that it'll be a time crunch if we have the opportunity to phase 2.
Excellent. Well, that's really inspiring. Let's open it up, and maybe people have opinions or questions. Riva.
I just want to say that I'm really excited that we have moved from this economic framework to the Anti-Racism Economic Justice Trust, and congratulations on making it through phase 1. I'm very hopeful that we are poised to be successful to get to and make it through phase 2. And I'm very happy about being a participant in this next phase. So a good work. I remember when Greater MSP did their partnership introduction, and I attended that with another council member, and I'm glad to see where we are today.
No, it's exciting. Thanks for that.
Judy?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank all of our partners in this work. Again, to acknowledge the fact that even just within a little bit over 10 years ago, maybe 12 years ago, Greater MSP stood itself up, recognizing that we didn't even have an economic development partnership for the region. CEI is still relatively new, but has done heroic work in its short lifespan to date. And the Met Council stands firmly behind each one of you all together in this partnership. I am so proud of the hard work that people are doing. I mean, as a Met Council member, I'm not in the trenches with you guys, but I can only imagine the heavy lift, the long hours, the really brilliant people and talent that's being put into this work. And, you know, I'm just really glad that Met Council can be a partner with all of you and give all of our efforts and information and data and knowledge and whatever it is that we can contribute. And I hope that we're successful in this and it will be an absolute sprint. You're right, Peter, 90 days is a lot of work to be done in a short amount of time, but because of all of the work that is coming together through this partnership, I believe strongly that we can do it. And the benefits will be felt by so many across this region, and especially as we try to compete globally for great talent, retaining talent, making sure that there's opportunity and equity for everybody in our region, and that we're recognized as an equitable region that cares about all people, and dismantling racism and making sure that all people are valued. So I just want to say thank you to everybody and recognize that in this moment and looking forward, there's so much optimism, but not to just go without recognizing all of the past work that has got us to this point so that this opportunity can even exist. So thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Judy. Molly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really exciting to hear it come to fruition in such a short period of time from, you know, just a matter of months ago is really amazing. It's very exciting. I guess what I'm wondering, I think I have every confidence that the project will advance into phase 2. And then I'm wondering beyond phase 2, or when you're in phase 2, what happens next globally? What's kind of the big picture here?
Okay, I'll let Amanda answer that. I feel like I need to manage expectations a little bit. So 529 applications were submitted. They said, the federal government said 50 to 60 applications to get through, so like a little over 10%. And then they were saying they'd award 20 to 30 national grants. So that's something like 5-ish%. So we are confident. We have a great proposal in, but even if we don't make it to phase 2, we need to keep talking about this bioinnovation opportunity because it's still a great idea. But Amanda, maybe on some of the specifics.
We have high expectations, so you've reset it perfect.
Yeah. I am ready for phase 2. I'm confident, just as you, that we are going to be proceeding. And so, no, this is really exciting. I think that we have an incredibly competitive proposal here. And what will happen if we proceed to phase 2 and then we successfully are awarded this funding, we will find out by September. EDA is congressionally required to award all of their dollars by September of 2022. So we will know fairly quickly if we're going to be awarded this big award. And to Peter's point, 20 to 30 regions will be getting the big award. We will have 5 years to implement the projects that we have proposed. So that sounds like a long time, but for some of these, you know the timeline it takes for some of these bigger infrastructure projects. It's gonna take a lot of effort to continue this, and part of the funding is to fund staff to do this work. So we hope we'll have some more capacity, not only at Greater MSP, but of course all these project teams that have to implement their projects independently and then working collectively together. So it will be a major lift. It will bring incredible attention and recognition of Minneapolis-St. Paul as a bioinnovation hub nationally and quite frankly globally. I think there's incredible opportunity for us to really focus on that kind of brand and image and recognition of our region and quite frankly the state of Minnesota as an innovation hub. And it's going to bring a lot of attention, a lot of new interest in our region. So I think there's a conversation with Met Council around how we as a region can be a competitive location for bioinnovation companies. I mean, I think there's land use implications, there's workforce implications. There's lots of conversations we can continue to have over the long term here about how we can truly be a globally recognized center of this type of activity.
Chair Zelle?
Yes.
If I could, I appreciate
Please.
that. I also think there's this tremendous opportunity, and I know Peter recognized Amanda and Andrea, but we both just have to give them so much credit in their partnership with Michael on this. They've just worked more than I could even begin to imagine on this, and so hats off. And Amanda, I know Home Life 2 is even busy, so just hats off for the speed of work on this. But I think too, one of the things that we have as a principle at the center is when we take on the work of assembling regional partners to go after something national, is that we will do it, you know, kind of whether we get it or not. And I think one of the things we've all been engaged in looking at how to leverage the federal ARP dollars that are flowing into our state. And now we've got significant dollars coming in from an infrastructure perspective. And we have significant numbers of national and global corporations who have really committed dollars around racial equity. And you all have heard us say this before, but I don't think we can say it enough times, that this is the moment of transformation and the moment for us to make sure that those dollars are not additive, but they are multiplier effects. And so I think one of the other asks that we have of you all is to be thinking about both what happens when we become awarded, but with that cautionary tale that Peter gave, but also the what if. So if we're not, if this isn't the time, if this isn't the moment, how do we use those dollars that are coming into our state to take all the great work that is going into the design of this model to be sure that we do become that globally recognized district and corridor for the globe, and that we make sure that we are maximizing business growth opportunities and job creation opportunities, because so much intelligence has gone into this by so many partners, and the council has a lot of great both resources and influence and intelligence to help do that. And so as a partner to help us start thinking about the investments that can flow and the policies that can flow over the next 5 years using the council's influences and levers will be a great value add.
I love that point, and Tawana, thanks for kind of broadening the aperture a little bit on this conversation, because there's this huge federal funding opportunity. And Build Back Better it's important and it's great, and we're going to focus on that. And counties and cities and the Met Council and the state have funding right now, and then there's infrastructure funding on top of that. So that's a conversation that you're having. You know, we're having with a lot of counties and cities who are kind of active in the GRIP-MSP partnership. And what we've heard from them, they're really got two big things: broadband and housing. And we've been kind of pressing, because there are a lot of counties and cities involved. It's like, when you say housing, what are we talking about? And the kind of shared focus is, how can we in this region leverage private funding with public funding to build more housing? You know, more homes, more market rate apartments, more affordable housing. And I know that's a priority for the Met Council. And I think this is a right now conversation that we'd like to be having more. And maybe as a part of that dialogue that's going with cities and counties. There are some private sector entities, financial institutions, others who are looking to get more involved, who have made commitments. And I think we're just trying to figure out those mechanisms, you know, successful mechanisms that already exist to do public-private leverage that could be scaled. Or maybe if there's an awareness of gaps, you know, something we don't have that we need to create so we can pull in. There's just far more private money than there is public money. And I think there's a wide recognition of that. And connected to the transit conversation, how can we be really mindful about place in the context of this housing discussion? And, you know, we've got the several billions of dollars invested in and about to come in this transit network that keeps getting built out. And when we're building maybe encouraging, incentivizing the private section to be building housing adjacent to transit or transit accessible, the value just goes up that much higher. And the market's doing that. I mean, along the Green Line extension, last time I was like 1.6 or 1.7 billion dollars.
Yes.
Private funding, and the thing's not even open yet. So we know the market wants to do it. So I think that there's something there that we could be doing, like even in these next few months together, to like maybe publicize the system map or something to channel that private investment into housing along transit corridors.
Peter, you said a lot, and I just want to amplify that. You know, we think sometimes of transit as just lines on a map about people moving, but it really is about the adjacent developments. And that 1.6 billion is the Green Line, which is let's just say a few years from opening. And I like the picture of those apartment buildings going up, those housing units going up, not just the pictures of concrete, overpasses. And because that's where this amazing connection, not just with housing, but with some of this economic activity. If you look at the news today, Optum United Health had a 10% increase in sales. They're hiring tons of people. They don't have parking. So, we have to start making, and I think Met Council, that's on us to start making those connections in the sweet spots of what we care about, which includes housing, climate, equity, and
sites, the one other thing to add that we haven't talked about, like housing, but like it would be a huge win and something we really haven't figured out yet in this region. If we could be developing, working with municipalities or counties to prepare sites that could be developed, like job creation sites for business expansion projects, adjacent to transit stops, transit accessible. Because if you can live near transit, use it, and get to your job, now we're really going to the next level. And that goes to the bottom line for families about not having to own a car and predictability and all kinds of other things. So I think we'd also like to put that site conversation on the table because we're getting a little thin on sites in the region.
And make a footnote in your brain, because you've described that in the past, but I engaged in a conversation with some University of Minnesota folks doing more robust mapping along with David Huff at Hennepin County. And I think this idea of actually getting opportunities kind of mapped out next to assets and planned projects, because we're so siloed, we need to start pulling all that together. So I read you loud and clear, and there's great opportunities for us.
I'll stop saying it, Charlie. I know that's like the fourth time you've heard me say it.
No, let's get through slowly. Peter.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I was going to ask, there must have been a lot of brainstorming going on at the beginning of this on what to focus on. And I love the focus on health and medical and food and bio. And I'm wondering, did you focus on that because that's one of, if not our largest clusters, and why that instead of information technology or financial services or distribution services or the variety of other clusters that we have in this region? Is it because we just have, that's kind of our primary cluster and we want to build that out even more?
That's a great question. I think the first part of the answer is it kind of pays to be ready, right? So regions that found themselves not really having a point of view either didn't get a good application or they didn't apply at all. The bioinnovation piece really started in 2013. So when the first regional economic development analysis was done, the thing that underlies the framework, which McKinsey was a big part of, it really identified that the biggest growth opportunities for our economy are at the intersection of the sectors we have. So whether it's like finance and technology, food and health with nutraceuticals, and like all these things in the food and med and health kind of intersection. I mean, that's where with genetics and genomics and data, there's a huge new economy, right, forming there that McKinsey Global Institute has estimated at $4 trillion in terms of value. There are a lot of different things that are going to happen in that space, but our region is positioned to compete and win for a number of those. So we were kind of working on this, year on year, looking at the intersectionality to the point where in January of this year, we had intended to stand something up to focus on this bioinnovation opportunity. It was kind of in plan. We didn't know that the Recovery Act was going to get passed or Build Back Better was going to come. But the analysis, the directionality was kind of already there. So it was a discussion, but it was the best idea that we had at the time. And Amanda, I don't know if you want to add to that.
Well, I think you covered it, but the part that's exciting to me as I think about the conversations that were had about the types of projects we could include here is that the types of projects EDA can invest in or does invest in, infrastructure, buildings, incubators, accelerators, workforce development and training. These are all the things that are common threads across food and agriculture, health, medical technology. And so for EDA to invest in these types of activities, we're going to see a huge multiplier effect, not impacting just one sector, but really truly impacting several existing sectors of strength in our region. I think that multiplier effect of these investments, if some economic analysis is done 20 years from now of all the regions that get Build Back Better, funding, I truly believe we've identified a cluster space that's going to have one of the biggest job multiplier effects of any of them out there because of this intersectional opportunity across our existing sectors of strength.
Great questions. Riva.
Yeah, I just wanted to add that, we were talking about the Green Line extension, but we're already in the thick of things with the Blue Line extension. A lot of opportunities along that corridor as well. In my district, I live in Brooklyn Park, and we have a number of medical facilities, and there are a lot of them being built currently that are very close to where the Blue Line extension is to go through. So I think that if we're looking forward, I think that's another area that we can plan for growth and innovation.
That's so right. And there's a cluster already, right, of all kinds of biomedical things going on. And that's a great example of how that transit investment, could be very intentionally and strategically connected.
And the end of the line, Target controls quite a bit of land right around that. So.
Yeah. And this is where, we've had this exact conversation with Hennepin County too, really excited to think about how we can be incorporating and supporting communities within the West Metro. And right on point, we have these immediate projects, but what EDA really cares about is how we're going to sustain this thing over the long term. And that long-term plan, which will continue to flesh out in this next phase if we're proceeding, is going to reflect this expansion opportunity and take advantage of the fact that we already have so much concentrated talent and the concentration of employers in the communities you just described. So absolutely, this is part of the bigger vision for how we grow the cluster.
Molly.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It also aligns with the city of Bloomington applying to be considered for the 2027 World's Fair around bio and medical innovation. So it's interesting to see all of this come together, and there's another wonderful resource and partner in growing this and moving forward.
Great point. Judy?
Just briefly, Mr. Chair, all of this is great. And I also want to mention that for my district, the northwest part of the region and other suburban districts, suburban edge districts, this is really important too, because we've got jobs, really good jobs in these clusters and beyond where help is desperately needed. So working to connect people who want good paying jobs to the outer edges of the region is also very important. So we are all tied together. If the core is doing well, the suburbs are doing well. And if the suburbs are doing well, the exurbs are doing well. We all know we're in this together. But this is very exciting too for those of us who might not be aligned right now with the green line or with the blue line. Some of our districts don't touch that, but we know that Some of our other work around transit and transportation are definitely going to impact us in a positive way in the future when it comes to economic development, community development, and making sure that those plans that might be 20 or 30 years out there will still align affordable housing, good paying jobs with transit and transportation options that we might not even see as lines on a map right now. And to the points that were made earlier, and Charlie's heard me say this too, when we, we're very map oriented at the Met Council, but, I'm really advocating for, the layers that we can put on top of our transit map that then shows where the housing is coming in play, and then shows where the job development is starting to show up, so that we can see how it's all integrated together, and then use the data that we have so that we can see how people across all economic spectrums and across all races are doing within those areas that are seeing some investment and some improvements. So I think it's great work. And if we didn't have Greater MSP and we didn't have Center for Economic Inclusion with us in this work, I think we could be very insular sometimes in what we're doing and not see the bigger picture. So again, just very excited about this, very excited about the immediacy of it, but also that long vision where the entire region is really going to benefit in a big way.
And just to give, to that point about the long term, Met Council does something today and then something else happens 20 years later. Those dots need to be connected, right? So you all understand the impact of what you're doing. And one example, there was a really exciting kind of deal win this year with a German company called SICK AG, just like, the German founder's name was SICK. But it was a nationally competed project that is worth 1,000 really good jobs. And it's a headquarters R&D and manufacturing, like North American center. And the site that was selected, you may have seen this in the paper, is like right on 494, directly across from the airport, kind of right in that Bloomington loop. And one of the reasons that that site won, and it just made a ton of sense for SICK to go there, is because of the light rail and the infrastructure, and then what developed around the infrastructure. That there is a community there, there are amenities there. It wasn't just a barren site. There was something for those employees to get to. And we didn't offer the same incentives as Texas did in that project, but a lot of different partners did a lot of great things. But the Met Council and Hennepin County did some really important things a couple decades ago that led to the creation of 1,000 amazing jobs. And it's sensor technology. So it's like, that's the automation space. So those are kind of cutting edge jobs. So the work you're doing makes a big impact.
Mr. Great story. Thank you, Peter.
This is Councilmember Musa. Can I go?
Yeah, please, Abdi.
Thank you. As you know, as a multicultural person who travels from time to time, I'm, excited about the possibility of positioning the region globally to attract more tourism dollars, education dollars, and attract global talent, but also maximizing our healthcare tourism dollars. I all the time hear my friends who travel to America going to Chicago and New York. So I always, preach about, have you heard about Minnesota? Please come to our region. So I think we're already global region, and we have what it takes to be globally known. But I think we need more work to do more work in promoting the region globally, and really positioning ourselves and bragging about our region. And I think sometimes we are not good in Minnesota about bragging all the good things that we have here that can really bring a lot of resources, both in terms of talent and money to the region.
Abdi, that's a great point. And Peter, you can speak briefly about the trade mission to London, but also Abdi, you've been in Africa, you've traveled. We're all ambassadors, so great point. This is a global economy, and we should be attracting global business. But
yeah, you said it. We were in a delegation of 50 or 60 Minnesotans in London and Helsinki this month, and we were told consistently by everybody the first group of Americans they'd seen in 2 years. So it pays to be first. And there was just a tremendous amount of interest because the bottom line is these companies are looking to get access to the U.S. market. They just want to be somewhere where they can be successful. And if that's Boston or if that's Minneapolis, St. Paul, or if that's LA, they're kind of open to the discussion. And it was a compelling case. We were there, with Mayo and others. But, there are companies that will be opening here as a result of that trip. And I love that point. And I think it's really important that we hold that kind of global focus and kind of keep it in the forefront, because obviously it's so easy to be focused on, right here, right now, but that's where the scale opportunity is. And we're going to do our part to get out there and sell Minneapolis, St. Paul, Minnesota.
Any other thoughts, questions?
I'd quickly add, Chair Zelle, on that point. We've been talking about USAID, American Rescue Plan funding. They very purposefully created a program for travel and tourism because of the way that sector was hit so directly by COVID and the economic impacts of COVID. And so the state of Minnesota was appropriated about $9 million for marketing and promotion. So right now, the DNR and Explore Minnesota are both, utilizing some of that appropriated funding. But there will be more. There's money right now that we can focus on that marketing and promotion of the state, but certainly a large component of that on the metro.
It's great, and I know we have a new director of Explore Minnesota, but it'd be good for us to make a connection. Yeah, definitely.
Really, okay, good.
Yeah, Abdi?
Yeah, really great to hear that point from Amanda. And, it's really, there's more than 1.5 billion Muslims in the globe. Imagine if we just, attack it to that population, to Africans, to Latin America, and say, hey, here's a really hidden secret you can come, invest, educate the kids and do work. So I'm really excited to hear that there's a funding for that, goal.
It's a real opportunity. Yeah. Andrea, were you going to say something?
Yes, sure, Sally. I just want to lift up, there's a lot that we're building off of here and a lot to be excited about in terms of the opportunity. But I would be remiss if I didn't also lift up that this challenge is more than just about money in terms of the solution. And that particularly as we talk about the supply chains, as we talk about the business development that needs to happen. And when we are doing that with intention around Black and Brown owned businesses, we have failed over and over. And so why is that? And so really being able to look at the solutions that we're going to need, whether that's on the lending side and how risk is assessed, whether that's the venture capital dollars that we will need to grow, not just for this, but for moving forward long-term in our region, and how and where we are investing those, whether that's around the technical assistance that we need and the changes in our procurement policies and practices. And so want to lift up that as we think about this partnership, how we come together, and that's not just around sort of the dollars and the investments, which of course is something to be excited about, but really coming together, and that's around like what research we need to be bringing to bear, what changes in policies and practices, where can we be convening to really drive some of those changes together. Thank you.
Excellent. Very important to keep that front and center. Thank you, Andrew. Anything else from anybody? I think we could keep talking, and this is so inspiring. It is also daunting because we're talking about really putting our heads and hearts into some important work, whether we get the grant or not, which is, I think, a really good way of thinking of it, now that we've kind of exercised our muscles and thoughts about this. So there's definitely numbers of next steps, and I would certainly invite our partners, which I totally value, and I think it was maybe Molly or Judy who said we would be we would be in a different place if we, in that council, ever tried to attempt this alone. We couldn't, and the fact that we kind of each kind of agency are bringing our own strengths, and three together equals 10. We can kind of bring out our best selves and be more focused. And so we will keep our fingers crossed December, but knowing that either way, we've got our work cut out for us. And as I understand it, again, I'll come back to this. We have additional U.S. EDA opportunities that we should continue to pursue. Get the word out that those are limited dollars one time that we could have some access, and it could be stimulating in a number of different areas. So lots to do.
Chair Zelle, if I may just quickly on that note, there are, like you mentioned, there are 5 other EDA programs, and we have communities and partners across the region who are working right now on applications to EDA for different projects. So while Build Back Better is the big shiny one, there are a lot of important projects across the region that right now are working towards application to EDA. So Greater MSP, CEI, Met Council, we've all been, generating some buzz around this opportunity, and there's certainly some that are really exciting that are well positioned to be competitive. So I just wanted to call that out.
Definitely, thank you. Yes. All right, well, it's truly nighttime now, and we've really talked through some, this is, I get so inspired, and this is what I think about council, this is why we're here for. So in connecting dots for human lives, and it really is visionary. I really want to thank our guests, CEI and Greater MSP, and all council members, and frankly, Michael and your staff, those that have engaged in this big work. It's we know it just happened. So a lot happening in our worlds. With that, does anybody else have anything they're just burning that they need to say? I will invite all this group to come back. We wish you the best of luck. I know I will see you, but I know other council members will want to talk about this in the future, and definitely short timelines, urgencies. That's not a government strength generally, but we know that we have to scramble to make things happen. So we're willing to do that. All right, have a great evening, everybody. And if I don't see some of you, have a happy holidays. And Met Council, we're meeting next week, so we got a lot of work to do for the end of the year. So don't let anybody leave town. Good to see you all, and we'll see you soon. This meeting is adjourned.
Good night.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye. Thanks.